Wes Thuhan, mein friend, and welcome to yet another video and another review is here, my dear friends, of something quite unexpected. I haven't thought I would enjoy something made in 2022 so much, but yes, indeed, I have. Welcome to the review of the first two episodes of Guillermo del Toro's The Cabinet of Curiosities, which I have been recommended, but I have to admit that I had decided to watch it even before that recommendation came, because Guillermo del Toro is one of my favorite directors and filmmakers and writers indeed. Of course, my first contact, quote unquote, my first exposure to the director in question was when he made the Hellboy adaptation, and then, of course, the second one, and then I watched his own creator-own films, which I enjoyed tremendously. Now, of course, I would consider him to be one of the old-fashioned, in the good sense of the word, I'm also old-fashioned, storytellers, him being, well, from a huge part inspired by such great creative minds like H.P. Lovecraft and Alfred Hitchcock. You can see that influence in many of his films, of course. But that is not everything. His background as a storyteller and filmmaker, as far as his what inspired him, his inspiration, it's a wide scope. It's very versatile indeed. And Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities is then a horror anthology that is currently streaming on Netflix. It is composed of 8 episodes. I've only seen 2 so far, but I've been told that the other ones are even better than the first 2. I'm very much looking forward to that. And what is also quite interesting and quite typical for anthologies is that each and every single episode is made and written and directed by a different creator. Now, there are 2 episodes that are co-written by Guillermo del Toro, the first one and the last one, and some of them are also based on short stories that he wrote. So the first one is that one, which is called Lot 36, and it was directed by Guillermo Navarro, and it was written by Regina Corrado and Guillermo del Toro, and it was based on a short story by Guillermo del Toro. And the second one is called Graveyard Rats, my favorite of the 2, and it was directed by Vincenzo Natali. It was also written by him, and it was based on a short story by Henry Kuttner, which was an author in the 20th century. I believe he died in 1958, and that short story I have never read, but I need to read it now because I enjoyed the episode so much. So the first one was... It was an interesting one for a couple of reasons. Firstly, there is like this very apparent inspiration by H.P. Lovecraft as far as, and by the way, before I proceed, there will be spoilers. This is a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen the Cabinet of Curiosities episodes 1 and 2, leave, watch it, and then feel free to come back. Especially as far as the demon goes, that was so Lovecraftian. The guy, the main character, buying this abandoned storage in a like, you know, when they are selling abandoned storage rooms, and they're finding an old table with a pentagram on it, and inside 3 demonic volumes that are concerned with summoning and capturing demons. And then of course with the German guy looking for the 4th volume, and then of course finding out that there is a fake wall in the storage room, and that storage room, of course, leads to a secret room where this sister of that old German fella, the other German fella, is trapped, and the demon inside her, very Lovecraftian tentacle demon. What was a bit sore thumb there in the episode was the clear and apparent xenophobia of that guy. He was this typical right-wing Republican xenophobic guy that is being presented by all the leftist stories and wokies media. Now, of course, I'm very fortunate not to be politically involved or interested in any discussions anywhere, especially as far as the American politics. I couldn't care less because I'm not from America. I'm from Central Europe, so I really don't care. But it was quite funny how bloody awful that guy was. It was, I think, done deliberately, and at times it seemed over-exaggerated how much Easternphobe that guy was, and you could see that. But at the same time, he was kind of friends with that African American fella, the owner of the storage room building. But I enjoyed especially the second part of the short story, the filmed short story, because that's where the action starts. There are some tropes, there are some cliche things, like you could know from the very beginning, and if you didn't, you must have been very sleepy, or you must have been distracted, or you didn't pay any attention. It was quite apparent that there was a fake wall, and then a passage led somewhere, because right at the beginning he said the measurements of this cubicle, of this storage room is weird. It should be longer. And then you went, oh yeah, the short story is about a key, about a storage room. There was an old fella who goes there to that storage room every day. At the beginning of the episode, we can see that he was chopping like dead cats and their skulls, and so he was bringing it somewhere into the storage room. He was jumping weirdly every time before he entered the storage room, so quite apparently he was feeding something there. And because the storage room was too short, there must have been a secret passage. But as far as the actors go, they were good, very good actors. Now, the protagonist was so annoying. He was so, I would slap him in the face for the way he behaved towards everybody. He was a pain in the bottom. And I thought I was a grumpy guy, but in comparison with that fella, no. My favorite character probably was the German fella who was interested in the occult and understood all those things and where the table come from, and all about the books. I enjoyed it very much indeed, especially then the fact that it was so much inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, him being one of my favorite authors. And it was very much Guillermo del Toro, very much indeed. You can see that it was written by him. You can see that it was based on one of his short stories. What I also appreciate very much are two things that are right at the beginning of every episode, and that's the intro, the opening titles. And tell me if I'm wrong or not, but both the opening titles and the music reminds me of the opening titles to his Hellboy film very much. Now, I know that the composer is somebody different, somebody else than the one who composed the Hellboy main theme. Was it Marco Beltrami? I think so. But it just reminded me of the main theme to Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy, and also the main sequence. And at the beginning of every episode, there's Guillermo introducing the short story, the short film that will follow, which reminded me very much of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And then, of course, him being a robust guy, Guillermo, and a director who quite often, not always, but quite often wears a full suit. He just, he's quite reminding me of Alfred Hitchcock. And the second episode was called Graveyard Rats. It was directed by Vincenzo Natali and based on the short story by Henry Kuttner. as I said at the beginning of the video. And that was my favorite one. It was from the past, of course, obviously. I believe, was it set in the 19th century? I think so, it looked like it. It was set in Salem, in the United States of America, and the main character is Masson. Well, an undertaker, but at the same time a grave robber, who of course took advantage of his position, and he was robbing graves. So then he could sell jewels and golden teeth that he found on the corpses, and thus then save himself from a huge debt that he owed to some, well, evil people, apparently. And but he had this little problem with the rats, and he claimed that rats were taking the bodies to the underground, and that the rats of Salem were vile and vicious, and that they were robbing him of, well, his money, because the corpses were stolen. He couldn't then rob them of the gold. And man, when he got underground, I do not suggest this episode for people who are afraid of rats or who suffer from claustrophobia, because there's this awesome, fantastic combination of the two. And at the same time, once again, a Lovecraftian influence. I suspect that the majority of the episodes will have something Lovecraftian about them. If I'm not wrong, Henry Kuttner himself was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, or they lived at the same time, I think. At about the same time, they lived and wrote. And also, of course, this show was created and overseen by Guillermo del Toro. So I really suppose that Lovecraft's influence is going to be seen and felt throughout the entire show. Because there was this aspect of this, eldritch-like god statue being underground in this, what he called, black church. And then, of course, this witch being there, this mummified witch bearing this amulet on the neck. And then, of course, coming to life, which was very much resembling this raised dead from Hellboy 1. Do you remember that one? When Hellboy was supposed to find something, and he raised a dead body, and then he carried it on his back. I think that was also very much taken from one of the Hellboy short stories, the actual comic book by Mike Mignola. So once again, this like Guillermo del Toro all around, and H.P. Lovecraft just is soaked through the entire episode. And what is fascinating is that I have never seen any of the actors before from episode 1 or 2, but they were all very good. Now, look at, for example, I have to compare this to The Rings of Power. I'm sorry, but The Rings of Power should have been the biggest TV/streaming event of the century. And look how much of a disaster it was. And then, of course, as far as the acting goes, now all those actors were planks of wood, except for the guy who played Uncle Benjen in Game of Thrones. He is a good actor, as well as the guy who plays Durin the Fourth. But otherwise, there's planks of wood, very bad actors. And look at the budget, like billions of dollars. I think that the budget for the Cabinet of Curiosities was much, much smaller. And then look at how good the actors were. I enjoyed the 2 episodes very much indeed, and I suspect from the trailers that I saw that it will get even better, and it will get more gory, and it'll get more scary, and it will get more Lovecraftian. And that I'm very much looking forward to. As an introduction to this show, it was very good. My rating is very positive, and I only recommend it for horror fans, for Guillermo del Toro fans, for the fans of gothic horror. And if there is something that you can watch on Netflix that would be new, I definitely do recommend this so far. and I can't wait for watching and reviewing the next episodes. Alright, that will be all. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you think if you saw episodes 1 and 2 and what you thought. Thank you. Namarie.